family. Welcome to this very particular special broadcast. It's a special broadcast. I think for some of you all were asking me what's going on. Why is it that this lady in Kenya is getting a preferred broadcast? And I try as much as possible to explain to some of you, but I'll try as much as possible to see how my explanation will go properly. So today broadcast apparently a different broadcast for me. The reason why is because of the rhetorics we're seeing or probably we've seen thus far within the Kenyan community. And when I mean in Kenya, I'm talking about the Kenyans in Kenya. Because sometimes we get confused when we say Kenyan community. For those of us who are diaspora, we automatically think it's the Kenyan community in South Africa. And so because of that, a lot of questions has been peddling around the Kenyan community. I have also been interviewed on several platforms around what I know about Kenyans, and I think I only gave a bit of a brief, and I promised many of you that I'm going to try my possible best for me to get people in Kenyan that will tell us what is happening in their nation. I'm particular about how I dispense narratives across Africa because sometimes we might have idea, but yet we have people who have different ideology, especially when it comes to first-hand experience. And so with that being said today, my guest is someone who is not new within the Kenyan community. She is an advocate, a lawyer. And one of the things I'll say is the fact that I was saying to her yesterday, by the time we were trying as much as possible, I was trying to see a lot of information. I'm like, this lady is active. And it will be an injustice for her to just focus on Kenya and literally let's see how to push her to make her a, for lack of better word, the Julius Malema of Africa, but on a female version. Without wasting much of time, we have a beautiful guest that is going to be helping us to unpack what is happening in Kenya. Her name is Advocate, if you permit me to use the word, Ruth Ambogo. I hope I pronounce it properly.
Yes,
Ambogo.
you have.
Trying to rehearse your name the other day, and I was asking a friend of ours who introduced us together. And so she was like, I'm like, no, I don't want to spoil the name. You need to teach me how to pronounce it properly. And she's like, Darlington, just pronounce it in the way you can pronounce it with your Nigerian tongue. I'm like, thank you. I was fast to say thank you quickly. But nonetheless, family, join me, welcome. For those of you who are going to be watching the repeat of this broadcast, because we need to do it live and so that we get it done and gone. But we're going to be unpacking the whole Gen Z revolution, because that is what the title of this very particular program is, the Gen Z revolutions, unveiling the mystery. There's a lot of mysteries that we need to unpack on this very particular broadcast. But before we begin our show, this very particular moment, I will give my guest, Advocate Ruth Ambogo. Welcome to the Everyone Show.
Well, thank you so much for the invitation. And just to clarify, I am yet to be an advocate. I'm a lawyer,
Oh,
but
lawyer, I don't mean,
yeah,
I'm
I'm
promoting.
training to be an advocate. But thank you for saying that, proclaiming that in the spirit.
No, that's good. I think apologies. She's a lawyer, and but before we begin to unpack what happens in Kenya at the moment, when you look at the rhetorics currently now in Kenya, what goes through your mind?
Well, a lot is happening in the country right now, and for me, what goes through my mind right now is the tone deafness of our political leaders. And by political leaders, I mean the tone deafness of the. When I talk about him being tone deaf, what do I mean? I mean that Gen Zs went to the streets and they had particular demands. The very first demand they had was that they wanted the finance bill rejected, or rather, the finance bill done away with. And of course, the president, because of pressure, did away with it. And then now, the next issue became that Gen Z came up with so many demands. Amongst the demands is that they wanted corruption fought. Key amongst the demands is that they wanted cabinet ministers fired, and they wanted a lot of changes that I believe the president is being tone deaf to when you look at how he has been behaving. And what do I mean by how he has been behaving? Just the other day, in response to what the Gen Zs were asking for, the cabinet to be disbanded, the president appointed a new cabinet. But first of all, he disbanded the cabinet that was in existence. But then what did he do instead? Instead of disbanding the cabinet and coming up with a totally new face of the cabinet, he returned six members who were in the previous cabinet, some of whom have corruption allegations to their names, some of whom have corruption cases to their names. So Gen Zs were asking themselves, I mean, we wanted you to fire the cabinet, but when you are hiring them, we didn't expect you to bring back the old faces, you know. And then now, in reconstituting the other remaining six, he brings up people who are related one way or another to the six that he has fired. So, like for example, let me give you an example. He fired the, or rather, quote unquote, he dismissed the cabinet secretary for health,
Okay.
and he hired another one who is associated to the speaker of the National Assembly. The one who was fired before was also related to the speaker of the county assembly of the
Mm.
National Assembly. He fired the cabinet secretary for agriculture. And then in the new hiring, he hired the personal assistant to the former cabinet secretary of agriculture. So there is
Mm.
really no change. And then looking again, when he now added the new batch of names to the cabinet, he hired members of the opposition who are politicians who have served before, who have corruption allegations to their name. Some of them have cases in court that haven't been resolved yet. And yet, one of the Gen Z's demands was that corruption should be dealt with over and above finance bills. Corruption should be dealt with. So, why would it, you as a president, dealing with these issues, bring back people who are corrupt? Second, he is now assuming that he has, now that again also, these new politicians that he added to the cabinet are members of the opposition. Why would you weaken democracy by hiring members of the opposition into your government?
Okay, I understand the part of his hiring and stuff, but I think before we begin to go into the whole policy system and his structural, the president's structural method, what were the stuff or what were the pain points that pushes the Kenyans? I want to get to understand for those people who are watching the sufferings of the Kenyans. What were the pain points? Because for all we know, Kenya was one of the most quiet nation we can think of, and all of a sudden we just wake up in June and we're like, "What the hell is going on?
Yeah,
is is the planet changed? Is what is so? It was a huge shock for everybody seeing what is happening in Kenya. So at the moment,
yeah.
before we look into that, can you give us an overview as to what leads to these? What were the things that was on ground that we just wake up and this is Kenya, and we're like, okay, what's going on?
I get you. I get you. And so many people are so surprised. I have friends across the continent. I have
Yeah,
friends in Nigeria. I have friends in Zambia who have all been calling me to ask me what exactly happened. How did Kenya get here?
yeah,
Now, how Kenya get here was that we got a president who, during the campaign in the last general election of 2022, made so many promises to Kenyans, overpromised and started, and as soon as he got to office, started under delivering. And by
okay,
overpromising, what do I mean? When the president was campaigning, this is what he was telling Kenyans. Number one, first of all, he campaigned on the premise of attacking the former president's regime, where he served as a deputy president. So even
okay,
for most of us, personally, I was in the opposition at the time, and I still am. And I used to ask myself, why would Kenyans believe somebody who says, I'm attacking this regime, and yet they served in the very same regime? And he would say things like, this regime, now the former president, he would say things like, I'm coming in to bring change. And what kind of change am I bringing? Number one, we are going to do away with taxes. He actually said he was going to do away with the taxes that Kenyans are subjected. He talked
okay,
about uplifting the lives of ordinary citizens. In
mm,
Kenya, we call them ordinary mwananchi.
okay,
And he said things like, and he partitioned Kenyans into sections. He
mm,
partitioned Kenyans into riders, motorbike riders, had promises for them. He partitioned Kenyans into factions such as women who sell vegetables in the marketplaces. He had promises for them. He had
okay,
promises for the young people about how education would be free. He actually said there would be free education. He talked about so many things. He talked about fighting corruption. He talked about fighting institutionalized corruption. He talked about not using police power to, he's actually talking about ending police brutality and things like that. And then he gets to office and starts doing the exact opposite of what he had promised Kenyans. So at first, what happened was Kenyans started opening their eyes. And within the first 100 days, there was already complaints. And by the way, the former president, when he was campaigning for the leader of opposition, Odinga, he
mm,
told Kenyans, I know this man. I have worked with him for 10 years. And I'm telling you, as Kenyans, if you vote for him, you will be crying in less than 3 months. And let me tell you, the man was a prophet because in 3 months of being in power, the first thing that started happening was there was massive excess usage of public resources.
Mm,
So they would
mm,
start
mm.
spending, overspending. The president suddenly is traveling to every country. Our president is known as the lying and flying president. If he's not lying, he's flying. So what would happen is that he's flying every single week. He's out of the country every single week. And this, as you would understand, is a cost to the ordinary citizens in terms of the money that would have been spent to other projects or programs that could benefit the citizens. And then
Yeah.
his members of parliament, as well as people elected under his ticket and his cabinet secretaries, started, of course, life became good for them, started stealing, I would want to assume, because they were suddenly were living a lifestyle that we had not seen them living previously. And they
Yeah.
would public flaunt, you can imagine a cabinet secretary going to a media interview and proudly bragging that he's wearing a belt worth hundreds of dollars,
Jesus.
proudly telling you that my shirt cost me, you know, 200,000 Kenya shillings. Why would a cabinet secretary put on shoes worth over close to 500,000 Kenya shillings? And yet the ordinary citizen is suffering. Now, over and above that, he started taxing Kenyans, ridiculously taxing Kenyans. And this began it started mostly in last year because he got to power in 2022. So the first time he had the opportunity to be able to lay down economic policies was last year. And
Mm.
the very first thing he did was he increased taxes on, he introduced first of all a housing tax, housing levy,
Okay.
claims that there's a project coming up called affordable housing,
Yeah.
where Kenyans are going to be all given houses, and you have to contribute, mandatorily contribute. Whether you have a house or not, you will have to contribute.
Mm.
Can you see how that is punitive to some extent? And that money, in addition to the taxes that you're being, first of all, VAT was value added tax was increased. So we had taxes that had already been increased. And in addition to that, you would still be subjected to your salary being deducted from your salary, an amount of money going to a housing levy. And ever since the affordable housing program started, there is no single house that has been completed.
So, which means it was a
And this is
collective of,
2.5 years.
almost, for lack of a better word, almost all the promises he made, and yet nothing, nothing.
Delivered on absolute, he has not delivered on any of the promises that he made. I wish, and I know that the Kenyans who are watching this would agree with me, that there is
Mm.
very little to show for ever since he got to power. For somebody who overpromised, he has seriously underdelivered. So now, where did the mark break for Kenya? Last year, the opposition members went to the street because they were like, you know what? People are suffering, the cost of living is high, and we are demonstrating on because of this cost of living that has become high. What were they met with? Over 70 people who participated in the demonstrations led by Raila Odinga were killed during the demonstrations.
Wow.
And this is coming from a government that promised and said there would be no extrajudicial killings in the country
Mm.
when they take over power.
Mm. Mm.
And then now the president invited the opposition to a dialogue where he was telling them that, you know what, I've had you, let us sit down and talk. And they sat down for very many months. Kenyans submitted their opinions before the committee, and eventually a report came out called the NADCO report, National Dialogue Committee report.
Okay.
And guess what? The basis for which this conversation was starting was the conversation was about the cost of living. The entire report had absolutely nothing in it. No, not even a statement that says high cost of living.
You
What did
know,
the report contain? Said the report contained creation of new offices, office of the prime minister position. So basically, they sat down and at the end of the conversation that was supposed to benefit Kenyans, they awarded themselves offices. And you see, the report at some point will have to be implemented.
mm, mm. You know,
So now
I,
the year started. This year
okay.
now,
Mm.
I'm getting to the point now. When this
Okay.
year started, Kenyans became aware that there's another financial bill because before any financial we have to prepare a finance bill that dictates how are we going to spend money, where is the money coming from.
Yeah.
And so the Kenyans got wind of the finance bill and started reading it. And influencers took to social media telling Kenyans, are you aware that there's a new finance bill on the street and it is punitive? And Kenyans started reading it. And the people who are most interested in it were Gen Z. Because why? In the finance bill, there was an introduction of so many things that were so ridiculous. They were going to tax content creators, and you know that that's where most people cry.
Wow.
They were taxing bread. They were taxing. They were also still including the housing levy.
Yeah.
They were still basically they were taxing us in all manner of forms, shapes, and anything you can think about.
Yeah.
They were taxing land that you own, ancestral land was gonna be taxed. So when the Gen Zs got wind of this, and Kenyans got wind of this, they said, let us, anybody who has any contact of an elected leader, send
Yeah.
it to Twitter. We shall send them a polite message requesting them that when the bill comes to the floor, kindly do not pass it. Now, our politicians, when the Kenyans started texting them, politely requesting that they should not vote for the finance bill,
Yeah.
what did the politicians do? They started insulting back Kenyans, telling them there is absolutely nothing you can do. I will vote for yes for the finance bill, and there's nothing you can do to me. And that is where the anger started. And that is
Oh.
when Kenyans were going to the street.
So now the thing there that is very interesting for me here, as you're explaining this, is the fact that they use the social media platform. I think from what I can gather is the fact that they use Twitter for them to be able to do this. I'm tempted to ask, who is the leader behind this very particular movement?
Let me tell you, and by the way, you know, this the Kenyan Gen Zs have been saying they are leaderless, partyless, tribeless. So they have no leader, they have no party, they have no tribe. And for that reason, that is why the movement became successful. And it's very true. There is actually no leader in this
How did
movement.
it sounds like that into that very particular space? You are a lawyer, you help me because I need to understand in terms of the policies for them that permit them to use that same platform for them to be able to do this kind of revolution in Kenya that, like you said, partyless, leaderless, and yet they were able
Tribeless.
to come together. And what were the system that they were able to employ that gives them that very particular rhetoric to push it and to be literally able to make all of us were shocked what's going on here?
You know what happened is, you know, Gen Zs are a different type of breed. First of all, the Kenyan Gen Z, when they were young, when they were just kids, when they were kids about to transition into adulthood, we
Yeah.
had the post-election violence.
Okay.
So many of them witnessed the post-election violence. And during the time when we had the post-election violence, we had a president who now late called Mwai Kibaki, who gave Kenyans free education. Are we together?
Okay.
So we have a very enlightened Gen Z combined with an equally politically aware millennial.
Mm, mm.
So the millennials advised the Gen Zs and told them, my friends, our sisters and brothers, younger sisters and brothers, your movement is to survive. Don't have leaders. Because our politicians, once they know who your leader is, number one, your leader will die.
True. True. That's
Number
Africa.
two, your leader will compromise. That's African politics.
Yeah.
And that's how the slogan, leaderless, partyless, tribeless, came about. So how was the system working? The system, and I know you've asked me legally, how was it possible for us to use social media to organize?
Yeah.
One thing you people need to realize is that Kenya is one of the freest countries, not just in Africa, but continentally. We have one of the best constitutions, globally speaking.
I hear you. I hear you.
So our constitution gives us a wide range of freedoms. And for us to get to that point of having a wide range of freedoms, there are so many people who died when we are fighting for the freedoms that we now have today. So
Yeah.
we enjoy unlimited freedom of expression, unlimited freedom to use social media. But let me tell you, I will not lie to you, and I will have to tell you that at some point, the government was threatened. We actually lowered the speed of the internet at some point. They colluded with one of the biggest internet providers, and they made sure that we were not able to communicate for one of those days when we were planning and organizing.
Yeah.
But when it comes to the leaderless faction, and you ask yourself, how did it work? People just came together and said, we are tired. And therefore, there was no one, when you would tell them, go to the streets tomorrow. All they would do is that they would go to spaces, Peter spaces, vent and vent and vent. The first Peter space that was the first Peter space that revolutionized everything
Mm.
was a space that lasted on a Saturday from 8 a.m. to past midnight. One single Twitter space.
Wow.
Millions and millions of Kenyans tuned in, and hundreds of thousands of Kenyans spoke, and they spoke in unison, and they said, you know what? We are going to occupy this parliament.
Mm. Mm.
They think we are joking. We are going to occupy any public space that can be occupied.
Mm.
They are hiding at parliament, we will occupy parliament. He is hiding at State House, we will occupy State House. And that's how the Occupy Parliament movement began.
You know, as you're saying this, I'm thinking currently now in my head as to how did the government, the Kenyan government, initially respond to the youth protest and agitations for them to decide to take this very particular move. Before now, what was the response of the government when it comes to these youths
Of
telling
course,
them do
yeah,
this?
yeah. Of course, the first response was ridiculous. You know what they said? First of all, they termed Gen Zs as, no, they are not used to young people who are elitist, who are smart, who have gone to school, taking to the streets. That's number one.
Okay.
So they started saying, for example, there was a cabinet secretary who said that these Gen Zs are taking Uber and are going to the streets using iPhone. Those are not serious people. They cannot demonstrate. They cannot tell us anything about demonstration. So they were like, how can you be taking? How can you be using Uber to go to a demonstration, have an iPhone, and after you're done with demonstration, go to KFC? Now they thought you were joking. Another member of the government came up and said, these young people are funded by Illuminati. Are we together? We are try and make parents get angry and tell their kids to come out of the streets,
Yeah.
because they know the moment parents hear Illuminati are financing their kids to go to the streets, the kids will be told you are going nowhere. But guess what? By the time they were saying Illuminati have sponsored Gen Z, it was too late. Parents had already onboarded the Occupy Parliament journey,
Mm.
because even the parents were being affected.
Mm. Mm.
I'm telling you, there were clips, and I wish I could have sent you this earlier. There were clips of parents praying for their children before going for the demonstration, protecting and covering their kids and telling them, I protect you in the name of Jesus, go and fight for the country.
Mm.
And when the kid comes back, parents praise and say, thank the Lord for keeping you safe. Tomorrow again, when the demonstrations start again, I will cover you in the blood by the blood of Jesus, go and fight for myself, who cannot fight for myself.
No, I think with the Kenyan story you're saying now is making me laugh. But now, before we get into the whole what's it called, the impact on the society, I want to ask from your own standpoint, can you share any personal experience or story from the young people who are at the forefront of this very particular movement? How was, for example, in terms of how did they navigate with the whole law enforcement agencies, your soldiers, your police and stuff? Any personal stories that you want to share attached to this? Because we all just see picture. Nope.
I know, I
That's
know. So one thing you need to realize is that what was happening during this protest, as I mentioned, there was a lot of excess use of force by police. They
okay.
were beating up protesters. They were illegally arresting protesters. And the most serious thing
But
they did was
what
killing.
your standpoint, that's coming from the media, it was peaceful. We only just see the pictures about police trying to shoot, and there was nothing and stuff. So
Actually, I wish you had asked me to give you footage. There was a lot of footage of police beating up people. There was footage of people being abducted. And I'm just trying to tell you what they were doing, then I get into a personal story.
yeah, yeah,
So, as you know, I am at the Kenya School of Law, pursuing my postgraduate diploma to become
yeah,
an advocate, as I mentioned in the introduction.
mm,
So, one of those days, we were just going about our classes, Actually, it was our demonstrations, actually. Then we get word that our president of the student council is missing. And I happen to be a member of the student council.
mm,
And I'm like, what do you mean by missing? And we are told later he was abducted from his house.
mm, mm, mm,
So I quickly take into action and I say, because I have had experience personally, I have demonstrated when I was younger, when I was in
mm.
my early 20s and mid 20s, I was constantly on the street with Raila Odinga at the forefront of fighting for everything and anything that the opposition says we are fighting for. So I know how government works. That if one of your people goes missing and you don't make noise about it, they will assume that you are somebody who is so indispensable, you're so dispensable, and they can do anything to you, including killing you. So the
Mm,
moment I heard our president was missing, the first thing I did was I said, guys, because I'm a member of the council, I called the other council members and I told you guys, we have to call for a press conference. So we
mm,
called for a press conference, and this is a very stern statement. Again, I will send you some of those clips. A very stern statement saying that we wanted our president back alive and alive, not alive or dead, alive and alive.
wow.
And so what followed was a 48-hour period of agony, of looking for him. You're being told 1 minute he's at this police station, you send people there, he's not there. You're told he's at the anti-terror police unit. You wonder what is he doing at the anti-terror police unit. You send somebody there, he's not there. You're told he's at Gigiri police station, you go there, there is nobody like him. And in fact, you're told no one has come here. So 48 hours later, we got a phone call that he had been found dumped on the side of a river in some county that is literally 5 hours away from Nairobi.
Wow.
And he was unconscious at the time. And we quickly rushed, we quickly organized ourselves as the student council members. We went to where he was. We found him in a very bad state. He was taken to hospital where he was treated. And after he was treated as a family, as his family and the council, we agreed that he needed a safe space to stay.
Mm,
So he actually had to come to my place because they identified my place as a safe space. And I had to host him for about 3 weeks. And let me tell you, this man had gone through a lot. He was tortured, he was beaten, he was things that are unspeakable, things that men don't speak about were done to him. And some of those things, of course, I can talk about it because he has publicly spoken about his story. I'll share the link with you so that you can share with your followers. And he
yeah.
publicly spoke about what happened to him. So this is not me violating his privacy. But I
Mm.
can tell you for the 3 weeks that I stayed with him, this is a man who was disturbed,
So, which means
completely
all we are seeing,
disturbed.
all we are seeing on social media in terms of what you call free and fair kind of protest or revolution is a total different ballgame from what you are saying.
It is a totally different ball game. I'm telling you, people have been killed. The numbers are rising. I think by now they're like 70 at 70. Just the other day, bodies were found dumped at some slum area in body bags. And later
Mm,
it was alleged that they were actually some of the people who were killed during the demonstrations because some of them were found with toothpaste under their eyes, meaning
mm,
they were the demonstrators. For a government that when they were coming to power, they said they would never use extrajudicial killings on people, it's quite unfortunate. And by the way, I'm not speaking against the government because it is fashionable to do it. I'm speaking against them because they are doing crazy things to people.
mm, mm,
They
mm.
are doing crazy things to Kenyans. And these are just young people who are very alarmed. And by the way, there's nothing they did to make the protest go down or reduce in terms of the volume of and numbers of people. They introduced ghouls. Imagine a government hiring ghouls to come and rob and steal from businesses just so that the international community can think that the demonstrators are the ones who are causing chaos.
You know, before I go to my next question quickly because it keeps playing into my head and I don't want to forget it at the moment. What policy changes or promises were made by the government regarding TOSFA? Because obviously we know that okay now this case is a bit calm and stuff, but what policies have been implemented that has made the youth for them, for lack of a better word, to take a back seat at the moment?
I don't think there is really any policy that has been done. The only thing that I think made a few of them take a back seat was when the president said he was not gonna pass the finance bill. That made a few people say, you know what, I'm a bit satisfied. But the majority are still saying, number one, we want corruption fought. And in fact, now that the president has appointed members who have corruption allegation cases, I mean, who have corruption allegation cases with them,
Mm.
for now, it looks like things have died down, but I can tell you for sure, people are strategizing. The Gen Zs are strategizing, and they'll come back strong. Because
So
if you have not addressed
yes.
the things that they are talking about, they might just be retreating to make you believe that they are satisfied. But when they come back again, and Kenyans are very unpredictable by the way.
Mm.
When they decide to come back again, it will be massive.
So, in your own opinion, at this moment now, this is me just throwing it on you. What do you think the government should have done at the moment? Now that the Kenyans are calm, what do you think the government? When I mean the government, I'm talking about your current president, which is President William Ruto. From your opinion, what do you think should have been done to literally find a way of having this youth not agitating again, but yet we have a progressive Kenya?
The first thing he should have done is that when he fired his cabinet, he should
Yeah.
have given us a whole fresh set of people who are people with high integrity, people that are totally unquestionable because this crisis has literally given the president a chance to rebrand. But what is he doing? Whatever he's doing, I personally cannot even understand. He had an opportunity, he had an opportunity to say that, you know what, I have been given an opportunity by young people. Let's now put together a cabinet that can actually serve and deliver for the people. Number two, we should have instituted a commission to begin investigating the cabinet secretaries that have just been fired on matters on the corruption allegations. For example, I'll give you an example of a cabinet secretary that has come back from the old cabinet, David Chirchir. He's a man who has been alleged to be involved in there was a scandal for an oil scandal called G2 oil scandal. He should have immediately instituted a committee that would have now started investigating things like those corruption allegation scandals. Number three, he should cut down on some of these other what he has tried to do something which I would want to partially commend because I've seen he's come up with austerity measures and some of the offices that were initially okay, there are offices that are there that have been said they will be scrapped off, but I don't think they will. He's just saying it to calm down people. For example, why do we need the office of the first wife, or rather of the wife of the chief cabinet secretary? When you have an office of the first lady, office of the second lady, which is also very unnecessary, because these women are doing absolutely nothing that benefits the society. The other day, a list came out of people who are working in the office of the first lady, I think second lady or first lady. It was a very long list, and you ask yourself, what are these people adding? What value are these people adding to the economy of the country? Because when you look at the project these women are doing, especially the first lady, the actual first lady, the wife of the president, she came on board and instead of even improving the lives of women like the former first lady did, projects that the former first lady had initiated was scrapped off. And I would want to believe it was by her call. So you ask yourself, why do we have the office of the first lady if she's doing absolutely nothing and she has almost 30 employees? So there's so much that the president could have done and should do. He still has a chance to do it.
I can hear you. Sorry, Steve, I think I've lost you. I've lost you a bit. I was using my headphones. So I think I've run out of charge. I can't hear you unless I try to connect my phone to my speaker. 1 minute. Just give me a minute. Give me 1 minute. Yeah. I still can't hear you. I don't know what's happening to my volume. Uh-huh. You know, I'm not a Gen Z, so I'm not very good with tech. So there's a problem somewhere. But let me try to put my other, let me just try to put my other, these ones. Give me a minute. Okay. Give me a minute. I've just put a different earpods, so I'm trying to connect them in 1 minute.
I've connected them and I can't hear you. I've seen your question. Can you hear me though? Well, how has the revolution impacted the ordinary lives of everyday citizens, basically the everyday lives of ordinary citizens? I think, first of all, business people have been affected. The business community has been affected largely, especially because given that the demonstrations are always on Tuesdays and Thursdays, the business community has been affected in a big way. So you find that Tuesdays people don't go to work, Thursdays people don't go to work. So especially in the CBD, and it's not just Nairobi CBD only. The demonstrations have been taking place in other parts of the country. And then also when they introduced goons to this thing, the goons started looting businesses. So there were so many businesses that were looted, some of them burnt down. So in a big way, the everyday lives of ordinary citizens has been affected. Give me a minute to check my WhatsApp from my. Okay. So the question is, what changes have I observed in terms of youth participation in governance and policy making since the revolution? For sure, there's a lot that has happened. Oh, I can see now the questions here. Yes, for sure, I can see a lot that has changed. The young people who typically were not involved in governance, in policy issues, in conversations around politics, are now actively talking about politics, are now actively even wanting to be involved in political parties. I've seen a lot of them wanting to join my party called DAP Kenya because we have been friends of Gen Zs, we've been standing with the Gen Zs. We never accepted the deal and offer by the president to join dialogue and to join government. So many of them are making the desire to join our political party. This is something that would not have happened because I know Gen Zs very well. And even in the last elections, very few of them voted. Very few of them even registered to vote. You can see right now they're talking about wanting to register as voters. Right now they're talking about joining political parties and even vying for elective seats. Are there any significant social or economic improvements that have resulted from the revolution? Social, yes. I heard that there was a Gen Z couple that met during the demonstration, and they apparently they are now engaged. Social in terms of even how we perceive each other, tribe-wise. I can see there's a lot of changes. The conversation is now changing, and people are talking about not wanting to be tribal. So the next elections will definitely foresee a situation where there'll be very little tribalism going on in the next election. Economically, I wouldn't say so because you see, any demonstration that involves people not going to work means people are losing their income and livelihood, and even the country in general, is losing livelihood. Life is still very difficult for so many Kenyans as we speak. They are struggling to put food to the table. Some of us who can put 3 meals a day to the table we feel very privileged. Even if it's just 2 meals a day, we feel very privileged because a majority of Kenyans are struggling. There are no jobs, and yet every single day we have a president who tells us that he has found 1 million jobs. I don't know where, 100,000 jobs in which country, and yet Kenyans don't have jobs. So for us, it is a never-ending struggle of Kenyans trying to put food to the table. But Kenyans, we are very resilient people. In spite of the struggles and the challenges that we are facing today, we are going to rise again. We are people who will rise. We are people who will continue to do what we do most, what we love doing, and we'll continue being the pride of Africa. We will continue being the country that is envied by many of countries, including your country, South Africa. I've seen conversations going on online where people are saying they should emulate Kenya, and it's true. In spite of our struggles and challenges, people still wanna be like us. Hats off to Kenyans. I can see the next question you've asked me is, what are some of the major challenges faced by the youth during the revolution? Number one, there was a time, or there still is, government trying to absorb some of the most vocal voices. There are some big tweets that were absorbed by government, and the Gen Zs were very disappointed seeing some of the people who are leading the spaces, like the space I told you about, the one that lasted from 8 a.m. till past midnight. The person who did it was absorbed by government, and the Gen Zs will never forgive him. So there was infiltration by government in the Gen Z revolution, and some of the challenges again we have faced is the brutality that's been ongoing, the fact that young Kenyans are being abducted. Those are some of the challenges we were facing. But in terms of organization and mobilization, I can tell you we faced zero challenges. Gen Zs faced zero challenges in terms of organization and mobilization, because what would happen is that fellow young people would be like, "Oh, I have an Uber. Can we get 5 people to do one car to go to the demonstrations?" You'd find Kenyans saying, "I have 5 T-shirts. If anybody needs them, come for them. I have fare for people to come from point A to point B. If you need fare, come and get fare." So the challenges were very minimal. Oh, and by the way, we were also, I would also say that we were supported by media a lot. There was a lot of media support coming to the Gen Zs. And as somebody who has used media a lot, as I mentioned, I told you earlier that when our president went missing, the media came out and supported us massively, in a massive, massive way. There were young lawyers who came together to bail out the young people who are being arrested. There were medics who came to offer support to the demonstrators who are being injured by the police. So there was so much order and organization amongst the young people, but very few challenges. So how did the government? Yes, I think I have responded to how the government suppressed. Yes. What setbacks or disappointments have been encountered in the aftermath of the revolution? For sure, we can still see people being abducted. Like the other day, one of the people who had been abducted before was arrested, illegally arrested, and detained for many hours. So you have been abducted, you are still dealing with the trauma that you faced when you were abducted, and then the police come abducting you. The gentleman is called Shad. Just Shadrach, like literally 3, 4 days ago, he was arrested, and yet illegally arrested, and yet he had been abducted when the first abductions were taking place. So we are still seeing young people being abducted. The other challenge that we are facing is that some families are yet to find their missing loved ones, which is quite unfortunate. The other challenge and setback and disappointment is that the president, I mean, the major disappointment is that the president is right, but he has not taken up that chance. The long-term impact on Kenyan politics, for sure, of this revolution is that, my friend, a lot of sitting MPs are going to go home in 2027. The president himself stands a 70% chance of going home and 30% chance of returning. So wherever he is, he also knows things are not looking good for him. Long-term effects are also the fact that many young people are going to get into elected positions of leadership in 2027. So there are going to be very beautiful fruits out of this thing. And I also think the whole issue of tribe is currently being reconsidered. We will have, for the first time, I foresee us having a tribeless election in 2027. We might actually just find ourselves having a tribeless election in 2027. How can the youth continue to engage constructively with the government to ensure their voices are heard? For sure, we need to, in as much as I know the Gen Zs are saying they're leaderless and all that, I think the leaderless thing has served its purpose. It's time for them to get leaders who can drive them to the negotiating table and get those seats of power. I know they were saying when the appointments were being done, I said we needed to have a Gen Z cabinet secretary. I mean, there are countries that have given young people positions of power. For example, ICT should have been given to a 25-year-old because they are the ones who understand technology. So, but because they were leaderless, there was no one to negotiate with. So, yes, they need to change. I'm not a Gen Z, I'm a millennial, but my advice to the young people, and I think generally young people, we need to push and agitate to be in positions of decision making, because we can't just be speaking from the periphery, and when given an opportunity, we do not want to take up the opportunity to be in positions of power. What advice would I give to young people who want to make a difference in their communities and country? My advice is very simple: start now and start small with what you have. Because I think the young people, because of how politicians have presented themselves as people who have money, people who have all the means possible to make things happen, they have shied away from making a difference because they think that, for example, to make a difference, I need a car. To make a difference, I need to have a bodyguard. To make a difference, I need to be in a position of power. I have been in a position to make a difference, and I have made it without having a car, without having uh, a bodyguard, without having all these big accolades to make a difference. So my advice to these young people is, you can make a difference regardless of who you are, where you come from, your economic status, your tribe. You can make a difference by beginning with what you have, where you are, and with the little that you have. How has my involvement in youth and women's rights advocacy influenced my perspective on the revolution? Well, it definitely has. My involvement in youth and women's rights advocacy has influenced my perspective in a big way, because it is by being part of the youth movement and the women's rights advocacy movement that I was able to offer the support that I have offered to some of the abductees, that I was able to even offer merchandise to the demonstrators. To some of them, I offered fare because I know how much it means to be part of such processes. I was able to encourage the young kids at KSL because I'm much older than most of them. They are Gen Zs, I'm a millennial. So for most of them, it's their first time to participate in these things. I was telling them the importance of being part of change processes and processes that are supposed to transform the country. And it's because of that experience that I was able to influence them to even go to the streets. So, in a big way, my involvement in the youth and the women's rights advocacy influenced my perspective on the revolution and also my involvement in the revolution. What lessons have I learned from the revolution that I believe are crucial for future movements? Oh, the leaderless thing is a very good lesson I have learned. Don't expose the people who are your leaders, especially when you're doing something that is so critical, so crucial, so life threatening. Don't expose who are your leaders, don't expose your strategies. And the other most important lesson that I learned just last week: confuse your enemies. Last week, the Gen Zs lied to the government they were occupying Jomo Kenyatta International Airport. The government sent police officers to the JKIA. While the government was focused on JKIA, Kenyans went to the streets in the CBD. They occupied CBD instead. So confuse your enemies. The other lesson I think I have also learned is that collaboration is a very important aspect for any future movement. Get yourself lawyers in your movement. Get yourself doctors. Get yourself accountants who can help you plan for the money that you have. Get yourself content creators. Get yourself merchandise people who make merchandise. So these are some of the lessons that I've learned from this movement that I think you should shape the future. If anybody is to ever have a movement in the future, these are the lessons that I have learned. Can I share my vision for a better Kenya and the role the youth will play in achieving this vision? My vision for a better Kenya is that one day I will serve as a deputy president. After I have served as a deputy president, I will serve as a president. And when that time comes, I will share my vision for a better Kenya. But in the meantime, my vision for a better Kenya definitely is one where every Kenyan can be able to afford food. Because in as much as we want to talk about the big things, the big buildings we will construct, the railways and the highways we will construct, at the end of the day, when you have a hungry nation, you have an angry nation. Number two, my future or my vision for a better Kenya is a Kenya where every child can afford education, and not just to the lowest level of education, but to the highest attainable level of education. That you can have 100% transition from primary school to secondary school, and 100 transition from secondary school to high school, and finally, to universities. And once you're done with universities, other vision for a better Kenya, you're done with your university education, and you get into a decent job that pays you well, so that you can contribute to the growth and development of the country. Because once you can eat, go to school, work, you will never hear of anybody going to the streets. Are there any final thoughts or messages you'd like to share with the audience regarding the revolution and the future of Kenya? My final thoughts are this: that our country found itself at a very critical moment, a moment that not many people saw coming. And it's a moment that taught us lessons that we will never forget as a people. And I'm not talking about it in the past tense to make it look like it has ended. No, we are still in the revolution is still on. My advice to young people, just as my KSL president who was abducted keeps saying, that when the cause is just, conquer we must. When the cause is just, conquer we must. So this is a just cause for Kenyans. We shall conquer, even if the government thinks right now they have conquered by swallowing opposition into government, we shall still conquer eventually. What are my plans? My plans are that I am supposed to be finishing my Kenya School of Law. I'm finishing my Kenya School of Law in November. And then in 2027, I am vying for the position of Women Representative Nairobi County. People can find me on Twitter. My name is on X, rather on X. My account is Ruth Ambogo, which is a verified account. I'm on TikTok, Ruth Ambogo. I'm on Instagram, Ambogo. So my name is constant everywhere, including LinkedIn. So even YouTube. So you can find me anywhere and everywhere. And I can also share my number, by the way, for those who want to reach out to me personally. I don't mind. I mean, you can also reach out to me via my M-Pesa. You know, I'm just kidding though. But I'm not kidding. I'm very serious. Times are very difficult in this country of ours. Anyway, my number is +254 7. I think you might want to include it down there. +254 7 29 69 3960. Yeah, that's it.
Um, okay, I think I'm trying to.
The
Can you
sound
hear
is
me now?
actually back. Yes, I can.
The sound is back.
The sound is back.
What did you do?
Oh, the sound did something, not me.
Are you?
Unfortunately, the sound is back.
I think now finally, family, this is we managed to try to improvise as much as possible in terms of our improvisations, and so Whatever happened, I promise I don't know. I just know that you just said
And by the way, for me, I'm quick when it comes to solution finding. You notice that I didn't give up on the interview.
no, I know. I noticed you didn't give up, and that's very good for you, and I really appreciate that. And you were quick enough also to see that okay, the question now is now coming on the screen, and for you
Yeah.
to then to communicate. So, family, for those of you who wants to communicate with Ruth, who she's a lawyer currently now, and she's pushing in her studies to become an advocate in Kenya. This is one woman that have followed her rhetoric, very strong woman in Kenya. You don't want to miss the opportunity. I was saying to her, as I'm going to give her, because now that she can hear me, I feel like even starting the interview again. Because there's a lot of things in my head that I needed to say. But I have to just type them to just make it quite fast and stuff. But nonetheless, but in case I was saying to her a few days ago that a couple of the projects we're planning to do outside of South Africa at the moment and stuff, we try as much as possible to see how to get her involved. But in case if you are willing to get her into your project, please and please, for us as everyone, we try as much as possible to promote unity, promote innovations, and to see how we can collaborate and partner with one another. I have said this and I'm going to say it again. If you have 5 friends and none of your friends is an African, and if your friends are all locals, then something is wrong with you as an African. So I'm recommending, hear me, I'm recommending you to have Ruth as part of your contact in terms of your project you want to do. If you know you want to be able to talk about governments and policy, I think one of the things I did not touch because I have my questions here is if Kenya, maybe that's one of the last questions I'm going to throw because I know I still have 4 minutes to go. When you
Okay.
look at the policies currently now in Kenya, do you think it fits the future narrative that Kenya wants to see?
I don't think so. I mean, if that was the case, if it fit the narrative that the Kenyan we want to see, we wouldn't be where we are today. So I feel like there's a lot of backwardness in terms of what our president is doing. There's a lot of backwardness in terms of what the government is trying to do, because we can't be a country where the president is traveling every single day and we have technology. Some of these meetings, African presidents attend them via Zoom. What makes our president so special? So I feel that he has to travel every other time. So I feel that and it's not just the traveling only. It's the backwardness of every senior person's wife has to have an office, and they're
Mm.
doing absolutely nothing with it. So I think that, and it's just a lot of things. It's just too many things. When you want to start taxing land that people own from the generations, you're taking us back to the colonialism days when people used to pay for heart tax,
Mm.
land rates and habitats.
Mm.
Those are not policies that are confining to where we want to be as a people. Not just for the future, even presently, they don't match with where we need to be as a people presently.
I'm tempted to put you on the spot. You're a lawyer. You can defend yourself after this is over.
Fine, on the spot.
I'm tempted now that my sound is back. I didn't know where it went to, but it's back now. When you look at, I'm trying to see who is the lesser devil, and you can give me your own opinion and stuff. Raila Odinga, William Ruto, and Uhuru Kenyatta. When you look at these 3 men, which one do you think has a progressive movement for Kenya, and which one is the lesser devil? And if you were to be able to put somebody now to take Kenya forward, do any of these 3 qualify?
The person who I feel a bit knew where Kenya needed to go, or knows where Kenya needs to go, is Uhuru Kenyatta. No offense, and none will be taken. Uhuru Kenyatta knew where the country needed to go. Look at it in terms of the kind of structural development that he brought. He gave us the SGR. In as much as there was corruption, he gave us the SGR. In as much as there was a bit of corruption involved, he gave us the expressway. Corruption will still be an African problem, but he knew where we were going in terms of structural development. He knew where
Mm.
we needed to go in terms of education. He knew where we needed to go in terms of so many things, and the general life of ordinary citizens. The
Okay.
lesser devil is Raila Odinga. He has always been at the forefront of fighting for justice and change, even though lately he has become a businessman. We understand him. He's now exiting politics. He needs to take care of his family. He's now negotiating left, right, and center and making deals with the government. We understand him. But
Yeah.
he has fought for the change that the country needs to see. Is William Ruto a good president? the worst we will ever have, if you ask me. And it's only 2, 3 years down the line, the worst we will ever have. If I am to be asked if is there anybody that I think can lead the country now amongst the three, none. But do I have somebody in Kenya that I think can take us to the next level? Definitely, my party leader, Honorable Eugene Wamalwa, the party leader of my party, which is called Democratic Action Party, a very progressive man. And one day
Okay.
I will to him for you to interview him on your platform.
Please, no problem. We can make that for me to get to interview him to get to understand. Because I wanted to ask you that, okay, why did you then leave your previous party to join this very particular party?
That I left ODM to join BAP because let me tell you, the party leader of that party is one very progressive person. He listens to the young people, he pays attention to us, he gives us an opportunity to advise him, something that you will never see in any other party. He's humble and down to earth. And the party itself, the agenda of the party and the vision of the party aligns with my values, and it's a very progressive vision and agenda.
So, which means that party, I'm particular to, I like asking this question, is also inclusive of women, or is just.
It is inclusive of women in terms of the leadership opportunities, but I won't lie to you. I'll tell you, it was formed a few months before elections, and when it
Okay.
was formed, what happened is that the only the men who vied on the ticket got their seats.
Mm,
The women who vied didn't succeed as much. But as the
mm.
party is rebranding itself right now, they're including women, including myself, in the leadership of the party.
Final question I'm going to throw at you. When you look at our continent called Africa, what goes through your mind? What do you want to see? What keeps you
I
awake?
see, I see, when I look at Africa, I see potential, a lot of potential for growth, a lot of potential to become the world leading continent because
Mm.
we have the brains, we have the resources, we have everything. If only our leaders could listen to the people, if only our leaders could listen, could sit down and look at how much potential we have and what we can give to the world, we would be so far away as a continent.
Mm. All right, family. I think I'll bring my thoughts to a close here. I have a lot of questions I wanted to ask my guests, but obviously the interview, my sound just decided to do what he wants to do. But nonetheless, thank you so much, my lawyer. I appreciate you so much for the time you have spent with us, and I look forward for subsequent communications also regarding Kenyan's economic and business. I'm very particular about that. This time, not the revolution. So I'm already giving you a heads up as to my next conversations with you, and so that you then prepare
No
one of the
problem.
policy and business. We'll see how that goes. On the next one. With that
I
being said,
look
thank
forward
you
to
so
that.
much for your time, and I really appreciate you. I need to leave you to go do your thing. Bye for now.
Goodbye. Thank you so much for your time. I totally appreciate.
All right, no problem. I know you are. I've taken 2 minutes of your time, but let me let you to go do your thing, and then we'll communicate on the subsequent product. I mean, subsequent live broadcast we need to do. Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Oh, I also appreciate you. Thank you so much.
All right, bye. All right,
Bye.
family, that's how we come to the end of the interview for today. I promise you that I'm going to still get my next guest, who is also going to be a Kenyan that will be here seated, and I'm hoping that my sound is going to be properly. For those of you who are watching it and you're wondering what happened with the sound before, please, I apologize. We couldn't just hear each other, and I think it has to do with sound, but we'll try as much as possible on the subsequent production for us to get it right properly. I promise you, I really can't tell what happened. I think it was just one of the sabotage that really happened. But from her own end, her communication was fine. So we will try as much as possible for us to download the whole thing and edit. So please, you will be if you hear me talk and there's no sound. It's just the fact that she couldn't hear me from my side, but I could hear her. So that's exactly what happened with the whole show today. But I promise you, this week on Thursday, Friday, please watch out. We're going to be having also another guest. She's a doctor. She'll be talking to us about what is happening in Kenya from her own standpoint. What is the divide in Kenya and from the standpoint of the health sector concerning what she's doing right now. With that being said, family, I love you all. I'll see you. I'll see. I wanted to say, yes, I'll see you tomorrow. I promise I forgot. I will see you tomorrow. Tomorrow is going to be our last prayer session that we'll be having, which is known as the Afro One prayer and prophetic declaration. So tomorrow, exactly 12:30. I'll be meeting with you, and so we'll close the prayer. I want to encourage you, please, if you're a diaspora, you know somebody who is a diaspora, you have family who is a diaspora, you are married to your diaspora, or you are intending to be a diaspora. These 5 points that I've just mentioned, please and please, I don't want you to miss tomorrow, what you call meeting at exactly 12:30 South African time. You can find your own time zone. Kenya now, I know they are 1 hour ahead of us, so Kenya will be 1:30. Nigeria is behind, so Nigeria will be 11:30. So please, tomorrow, let's come together, let's pray, and let's trust God for the new movement. After tomorrow, literally, we are going into August. Let's talk to August, that August should bring good visitor for us. With that being said, family, we've come to the end. I appreciate you, and I'll see you all tomorrow at exactly 12:30 South African time. Bye for now, and God bless you.